my baby.
I'm Dana Denha.
And I am Melissa Bondi, and this is Adventures in Parenthood, where we take a ride on the roller coaster that we call parenting.
Kids are unpredictable. You never know what they're going to say, do, or even ask. But as parents, we have to be prepared for just about anything. You know, now that Bryn is older, what are some of the things that you seem to struggle with? I've noticed like they're from 6 to 7, there's definitely an attitude shift. There's no question.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've definitely um had the boundaries pushing, the attitude, the sass, and it's very prevalent, definitely, like you said, between 7 and 8, that I'm seeing. And again, sometimes I feel like it comes from me if I'm sassy back, or I don't have my parent hat on at that moment, and I just want to be like, oh, just kind of sarcastic. I get it right back, and I'm like, oh, oops.
I can say that I do the same thing. I can't help it. I just like someone's talking to me sarcastically, I'm going to talk a little sarcastically back.
Right.
And then I sort of catch myself and be like, okay, so now this is just going nowhere because we're
Right.
both being sarcastic and annoying to each other. So
Yeah.
I think like, yeah, that's definitely a huge thing. And I think they learn at home because I think we all talk a little sarcastic. Like I talk to my husband sarcastically at home, like, and it's not a big deal. Like we understand it's sarcasm, but I think with a kid, it's not,
Right.
they don't fully understand it. And sometimes they might think you're being mean when you're like being sarcastic.
Right. You have to clarify that I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just being trying to be funny sarcastically. And I get that back. And my feelings are never hurt, but it's more or less, making sure that she understands that if I give some sass back, it's I'm just being playful. So I got to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I think what I ended up doing when it's like a serious thing, I end up making her feel guilty because
Mm,
like she hurt my feelings, and I
mm,
think that along in itself is the thing that really changes her tune about things when she knows. And this is something that I remember as a child myself is like if I hurt my mom's feelings, then I truly felt bad about it.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. They know empathy and sympathy and have those feelings just as just as much as we do right now. So,
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that it's like I don't want to make someone feel bad, but at the same time, it's like I don't want you to continue to talk to me like that. That's for
mm,
sure.
mhm. Right. That's what they say. You have to cut it off. You have to stop it before it gets worse and discuss it. That's what they say. Yeah. In the parenting handbook, right?
Yeah, well, our next guest actually does have a parenting handbook, and he's got a lot of advice to give parents, and it's good advice. As a parent, we learn and grow with our children. We read books, articles, and ask for advice. But in the end, the decision-making process is on the shoulders of the parent or guardian. Joining us is Keith Hafner of Keith Hafner Karate, here to give us some tips on how to tackle some of the tough questions. Welcome back to the show, Keith.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you always have such good parenting advice, but like the thing is, like I said, in the end, it really is up to the parent to decide. But I think for some stuff, it's good to talk to friends, coworkers, whoever it might be, your karate coach in a sense.
Yeah, one of the things that happens for parents is that time goes by so quickly and there are so many details to take care of. And I think everybody has an idea that there are important things that they should be doing, but where and how do you fit those things in?
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you started Keith Hafner Karate and, what led you to really being someone that you can turn to for advice about parenting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I started in martial arts as a kid when I was 16 years old. Back then, it was really just fighting, and whoever could kind of hang with the tougher fighters continued. And I not only earned my black belt in that, but continued to teach that way until I became a parent. And all kinds of things changed in my martial art philosophy when I had my own kids at home because I could see that what I was teaching in my karate school was not congruent with the things that my wife and I valued in our home for our sons. And I was always very serious about trying to teach my sons what they were going to need to be successful in their lives. And so going back into the early 1980s, I started bringing the things that I was teaching my sons at home into the karate school. And truthfully, it took a long time to be able to do this effectively. But in the meantime, we have taught more than 25,000 kids our system. And my sons now are grown, and I am a grandparent. And so we kind of think of it as though we've got a laboratory here where it's sort of like a school, but the beauty of it is, unlike the school that your kids attend, we don't have to do any academic work. And so we are free to make our own curriculum and to try to empower kids with tools that they're going to need to be successful.
I had a friend recently say to me, she's having some difficulties with her son in terms of, just 5-year-old acting out. She goes, you know what? I think I want to, start him in possibly karate. And I said, funny you should say that, knowing, we were going to be speaking soon. Do you have parents that come to you with those kind of concerns, or is it more like my son or daughter wants to try karate?
I think very few people come to us because they are concerned about self-defense or they have a burning desire just to learn karate. I think because of our messaging and our branding, I think most people understand that we're sort of playing a bigger game here, playing with a bigger agenda. And I think most of the people come to us are exactly like your friend. Now, we start kids, a lot of times kids that are 3.5 are ready for our program. And some people might say, oh my gosh, that's so young. Sometimes I'll flip that around and say to them, when is the right age to start teaching your kids about telling the truth, or getting along with their siblings, or stepping outside of their comfort zones? Do you really want to wait until they're 6 or 7 and 8 and have to unlearn a whole bunch of behaviors that are really starting to take root?
And really, what makes karate different from, let's say, a dance class? Like when my daughter was 3, she was in dance already. So why not put your kid in karate at 3 to learn how to be in a group, how to listen to other adults besides your parents? I think those are big skills that like help in the future when they're in school, when they really start going to school full time.
It's interesting you say that, because I think as we got better at this, we began to see that I think karate is a great way to fulfill our agenda. But I remember a point, I don't know, this is 15 years ago or something, that we realized it doesn't even have to be karate. If we were teaching dancing or archery or bowling, we could do exactly the same kinds of things that we're doing here with our martial art lessons. We love karate, and we think that it's a great, empowering activity, but our agenda has really transcended the activity itself.
Yeah, I
And you,
do think kids learn a lot from these activities outside of school, outside of the home. And I think that something that I always think about, like with kids, like kids, my own kids or like my nieces and nephews and stuff, is, they might act out at home, but I'm like, how do they act when they're at school? How do they act when they're at karate? Are they, respectful to everyone? And I think that's the most important part, because I think it's okay to act out at home because you feel comfortable at home.
I think what happens a lot of times with parents that come here is that they observe that the kids perform better, act better, engage better with the karate teachers sometimes than they do at home. And we very, I think, gently consider that we are conducting a school not just for the kids that are taking the lessons, but for the parents that are sitting there in the spectator watching, and providing information that empowers them to use some of the things that we do in the karate classroom at home. Because one of the things that I think is true is that if you don't like what your kids are doing, you've got to look at this idea that they've been taught that those behaviors work. And that's why they're continuing to do them in the home. And if you just change the game so that those behaviors no longer work, I think you can turn around bad behavior pretty quickly. And when you sit there and watch our karate teachers be firm and fun and supportive all at the same time with their kids. They start to see their kids in a new light. And I think parents sort of understand that, hey, yeah, there are skills that I can learn, not just the skills that my sons and daughters are.
So do you see parents going this route versus maybe having to see a psychiatrist or psychologist or someone else on along the lines of the behavioral discipline route?
Yeah.
Do you see folks come, like say, let's give martial arts a try, or we know there's, discipline in there, a different type. Do you find that?
Absolutely. If you look at parents, I think, guys, you'd have to agree that parents are confused, and that there's a lot of an increasingly complex world, and parents have been exposed to a lot of different ideas about parenting over the years, and they are confused. And not only are they confused, but they are busy, and they do not have a blueprint for getting to the places that they'd like to go. But the truth is, if you are a parent and you are in charge of kids, you better think of yourself as a teacher who is running a school, and that school is designed to prepare those kids to handle their upcoming challenges and ultimately to release them to the world. And if a parent were to say, I don't have time to do this, I would say, if you don't have time to do this, you better create time to solve the problems that are going to come up later on, because sooner or later you're going to put in time on this, and it's a lot more pleasant to put it in the front end of this rather than have to deal with kids who aren't ready to be responsible out there in the world as they get old.
I mean, you are so right about saying we have no idea what we're doing when we start parenting. I think as we go, things make more sense, but it really is. It's like you leave that hospital with that baby and you're like, we'll see what
Yeah.
happens, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I think parents a lot of times don't appreciate how much their kids are observing about what's going on and how much they are learning from what's going on. And I think parents also, at the same time, this sounds sort of as a counterpoint, but I think parents a lot of times give their kids for interpreting or understanding what's going on around them in a lot at a lot higher level than they do, because I think kids observe a lot, but they get it wrong. They misunderstand it. Dana, if you take one of your children and that particular child is hurting for whatever reason, and in your mind, I got to kind of drop what I'm doing and pay extra attention to kid number one. Kid number two is going to observe that way more than you thought. And sometimes a kid will think, Mom likes my sister better than she likes me. They will come to the wrong conclusion from that. And that kind of thing is happening all the time. Kids are drawing wrong conclusions. And then you're left with the behaviors that come out of those beliefs. And when I say a parent has to consider that they're running a school, this is what you have to do, is you have to teach kids to understand what's going on around them and to get them to interpret clearly. And you've heard me say in these videos before, 10,000 conversations is the way that you have to do this, because it takes way more teaching, way more conversation, way more empathy than you might suppose to raise kids that are healthy, happy, and confident.
Yeah, empathy is huge, and it's something that I have a lot of, but my husband doesn't have a lot of. And I notice like I have to almost tell him to be empathetic
Mhm.
because I'm like, you don't understand how it feels. And it like, I'm someone that will like cry for somebody else in an instant, but he doesn't even understand that they're bothered by something. So it
Yeah.
is something that like some of us are easy, it's easier for some of us, but not for others too.
Mhm.
Parenthetically, I'd say that makes you a good team, because there are things about how he is conducting things that are useful too, probably.
Oh,
And I think it's
definitely.
the
He always
balance of those.
teases about me being like almost like a hippie parent in a way, you know?
Yeah, I like that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're actually going to take just like a quick break and we'll be back with in 60 seconds with more from Keith Hafner. We're back with Grandmaster Keith Hafner, and we were talking about raising kids. Keith's sort of an expert. He's been around a ton of kids. He's got his own kids, he's got grandkids, and he's around way more kids than anyone could even imagine. So one of the big things I think that a lot of parents struggle with these days, and it was something that we never got to see growing up because, or Melissa and I didn't get to see, or you, because the internet wasn't as prevalent when I was a kid. I mean, you had maybe a computer lab at school, but you didn't have the internet. But today, every kid's got the internet so easily available to them. And I think a big thing is like setting these boundaries and being like, and I think this is a problem I honestly have, is really being like, you only are allowed to be on this thing for like 30 minutes, things of that nature. So what is your advice about the internet and the in young kids?
When I was a kid, we had a similar thing, but it was not as voracious. Television, and back then, people kind of thought of television in that same way. Like this is
Mhm.
what was goofing the kids up because they'll sit glued to the TV forever. I think anything that your kids are exposed to that they're able to access without limits is a problem. If you let your kids have access to the refrigerator without limits, that can be a problem. Or if you do not have geographical boundaries for where they can play and they can't go past the street light or whatever. If you have no boundaries there, that's a problem. And I think the internet, because it oftentimes acts as a babysitter for kids.
Mhm.
I see a lot of kids that have access to it without time limits. And I think that just by definition is wrong. And so I think that the things that can be accessed online are wonderful. But I think there absolutely have to be regulated boundaries, and they should probably be pulled closer in than most parents might think. Um, I think something is missing that kids don't go outside anymore the way they used to. They don't create their own games and fun the way they used to. I think that just having your kids be outside for 2 hours a day is a marvelous addition to a family routine. So I think that with the internet, certainly screening what kinds of things the kids can access is essential. But I think a family that limits screen time to 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, something like that is going to be happy with how that goes. And I will say that all boundaries are tested, that no matter what you put in place, kids will push back on that to see if you're serious. And so I think parents have set boundaries and are sometimes not dedicated to the enforcement of those boundaries or to the supervision of those boundaries. And then they fall apart. And then, what the kids learn is that boundaries don't matter, that mom and dad weren't serious about the boundary. And then that's how they approach the next limit that is imposed upon them.
I will say I have had this situation arise recently a few times, and it makes me feel like I'm doing a good job as a parent because it doesn't always have to be negative. It can be like the
Yeah.
triumphs as a parent
There are
too, right?
victories too. Yep.
Yeah, there's victories. So I have a 1-year-old and my daughter's 7.5. So when I'm home alone at night, he goes to bed at 8 and she goes to bed at 8:30. But sometimes it takes me really long to put him to sleep at night. So I had a discussion with her and I was like, if I'm not back downstairs by 8:30 to put you in bed, can you brush your teeth, start reading yourself a book, and I will meet you in there. And she did it like a few times. And then yesterday I couldn't hear if she came up or not. And it was past 8:30 and I leave my room. It was like 8:40 and I go straight to her room and she's done reading a book. And I felt so proud as a parent that like I didn't have to be there and she just did it and she respected me and she did it and it felt really good.
Mm-hmm. That is what you're after as a parent. Then, the 10-year-old version of that and the 15-year-old version of that, and to teach them something and then find that they do it without you making sure it gets done.
Yeah.
But a lot of times parents are weak on the enforcement and they forget about it. They let it slide and then it just never happens. The parents are frustrated and the kids never get the skills that you're trying to get them to.
It's
Yeah,
hard
I
sometimes.
def
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely have
Very
had
hard.
a situation where it was in my in punishment, like if I take something, I would take an iPad away, am I punishing her and myself? I've questioned that. Like, who am I punishing here? Because I'm keeping you quiet for a short while and letting me get my stuff done. But in the meantime, I'm going to take it away, and then you're going to want to do something with me, and I'm gonna be like, oh, I can't. I'm doing this, and then I've had to find that balance of if that's the case, I have to put my stuff to the side and make sure that I'm playing or being, giving my attention to her
Yeah,
versus just saying, go find something, right? That's what we say. Go do something. But
yep,
sometimes those kids need that guidance of what to do with even
yeah.
with just an idea. And I had to learn that as a parent.
I like that, Melissa. And one of the things you have to do when your kids don't perform as well as you hope they would, you have to kind of look at how you've set this up, how you've structured it. Have I supervised? Have I reminded? Have I enforced the boundaries?
Mhm.
And if you have, then I think it's good to kind of move on to consequences. But
Yeah.
sometimes if you look at what they've done and you think, they're not doing what I want, but I haven't really supervised this thing. I haven't really been consistent with this thing the way they need. And then you take a pause and kind of correct your own approach and then go back to it. Um,
Right.
but kids will push back.
Mm.
It's a turf battle all the time. And that's part of growing is for them to test these boundaries. And I think what's important is what happens next after they've crossed a line that they're not supposed to cross.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that I think my in my household, my husband's more ready to punish for something. And I was in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what they did that would deserve a
Mhm.
punishment. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like where I think he thinks things are wrong quicker than I do. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where we have those two parenting styles that we sort of have to meet in
Yeah.
the middle to figure out, is this worthy of a punishment or is it just like changing what they're doing and doing something else?
Sometimes the behavior will be intentionally bad. Some kid will intentionally break a rule. But sometimes what constitutes misbehavior, you'll look at it and you'll think, boy, they really made the best decision they could, or they've kind of operated on the playing field as they saw it. And maybe it wasn't the right decision, but I can kind of see how they made that. And
Mhm.
they sort of did that in good conscience or in good faith. And then I think you handle that differently than something where they are just intentionally breaking rules.
Right.
Melissa, what's your parenting style like with Brian? Is it similar to ours, but you're the disciplinarian?
I'm not the disciplinarian. Like I do, but he's he's the one that she'll be, tears if she does something wrong or scared, not scared, but just, you don't mess up, right? So it's more like he holds if there's consequences, he holds her to it. I'll be like, oh, yes. I'm the one
Yeah,
that
yeah.
no, if there's consequences, he holds her to it, and sets the boundaries for sure. And I'm more like, I waffle a little, and he's like, you can't do that,
What
but I
about
do.
you, Keith? What do you and your wife, are you like a combination where you're, work together or
I think we are somewhat like what you've described with your husband, kind of good cop, bad cop, kind of.
yeah.
That's not a great way to describe it, but what's really important and what really kids deserve is a consistent approach, and that boundaries are enforced because they feel safe. They might not like the boundaries, and they might not like that they are uh, rigorously adhered to, but they feel safe when they know that somebody who knows what they're doing is at the wheel. And if the boundaries are vague, if they are inconsistently enforced, it makes kids feel at risk, feel like they're kind of out there on their own, and that produces a lot of bad behavior when they feel that way.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things you've discussed multiple times I've seen online is this idea of, tackling the problems before they arise. Can you talk a little deeper about this and maybe some of the common issues that every parent sort of deals with that you should really just talk to your kids about in advance?
Yeah. In our lives, I think life is really good at giving us clues as to how we ought to be doing. If you have to, if you're out sick all the time, you could look at what you're doing and say, well, I should make some changes here. And so if your checkbook is always overdrawn, your checking account, you could look at that and say, I should make some changes here. And I think this happens all the time with kids, is that you look at what they're doing and they will create an agenda for you if you're paying attention. They will show you what needs to be taught. And anytime you can solve problems before they arise, which is not really all that difficult because we wind up solving them after they occur anyway, which a lot of times is brutal. But your kids, if they are mouthing off, if they are fighting with each other, if they are sulky, if they are whiny, any of those behaviors will show you what the agenda needs to be. And then you start to proactively talk about those things. You talk about them when you're not upset. When your kid mouths off to you, you might have to do some things right then, but then you think, well, how did this happen? And and then you start to think, I might have let this happen. I might have let this go unchecked for a long time. So first of all, I'm going to correct my own approach to this. But then I'm going to start to talk to my son or daughter, not when I'm upset, not after some mouthy incident has just happened, but I'm just going to start to talk about this on the ride home from church or in the car on the way to the grocery store. It's going to be one of the 10,000 conversations.
That's funny, Keith, that you said that because I've caught myself a few times recently when I get the 8-year-old attitude toward me, I have to stop and say, or I look and I think, how was I just speaking to her? She's kind of playing off of me because I'm frustrated, lost my temper, my patience is worn. And so I'll take it out on her and then I look at it and she gives it right back. That's what I've noticed. And I'm like, you know what? It's not necessarily her. It could be, and it has been me and her just playing to how I'm acting. So I've caught myself, we've talked about it, but it's funny that you said that because it's very true and very real.
Sometimes you'll kind of feel like you're following a script and that you've done this same drama many times and she
Yep.
knows her lines and you know yours
Yep.
and it kind of unfolds the same way. And I think once you recognize it that way, you can say, okay, I've got to change the script. I've got to change the dialogue. And,
Yeah.
the truth is the good behaviors that your kids do, they do because you taught them. And the less than good behaviors that they do, those things were learned too. And so
Mm.
to see things that you don't like and think, how did son or daughter learn these things? They learned them because they worked. They learned them because they went unchecked and unchallenged. And I'm just going to make some small changes
Yeah.
that will teach them something else, teach them better behaviors.
All right, Keith, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for your great advice that you always give. I think you're
Mm-hmm.
an amazing soundboard for parents.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show.
If you have an idea for a parenting show topic or guest, talk to us on social media at hashtag CTN Ann Arbor.
And for more on our programming and our services here at CTN, visit a2gov.org/CTN and visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to watch a full lineup. And remember to like, subscribe, and to share. And thanks again for joining us on this adventure in parenthood.